she takes them with them. She takes them to a shelter, a small little place that they're going to be at for maybe a week or 2 weeks until they can be taken to another one, and then another one, and then finally, eventually, they'll be taken to the main spot. When they're about to leave, the night before they leave the shelter that they've been at for I think a month, the woman who runs it takes them out one by one and tells them to write a letter to their parents. Write a letter to your parents about how it felt for them to unwind you, say whatever you need to say, and that she's going to keep, and then when you're done, put it in an envelope, write your name and your parents' address on the envelope, and she will keep it. And your birthday, and the day you will turn 18, and she will keep it until 1 year after you turn 18. If you haven't claimed the envelope by the time you're 19, then she will mail it to your parents. Otherwise, she will give it right back to you. And it's just this very powerful moment where they all have to really dig deep inside themselves and think, what does this mean to me? While they're in the safe house, they meet this kid named Roland. He's a very military type guy. He is very good at mind games and smear tactics and things like that. So they leave and they run this string of safe houses until they get to the second to last one. It's this big warehouse with all kinds of unwinds in it, and Roland is starting to kind of like rule it, and he actually plans to kill Connor because Connor gets on his nerves. Throughout this time, Lev did escape, and he met up with this guy he calls Sci-Fi, who he claims not to be an Unwind runaway. He says that when he was a kid, he had some problems, and he had some brain damage, and of course, at this point, they can replace the brain tissue. But usually, they will give you tiny little tidbits of brains. But he was so smart, his parents, his two dads, gay dads, yes, I mean that literally, didn't want to take the chance of his IQ dropping. So, they gave him an eighth of somebody else's brain. This is not usually done, but it affected him in ways that he can't even describe. This kid who he was before, he still thinks that he's this kid. He's basically kind of wondering what is going on, why am I in this new body, what's happening to me. The kid every once in a while takes over. I'm just going to tell you how the story with Sci-Fi ends. Eventually, they reach the place that Sci-Fi was trying to go. Lev is still with him, and Sci-Fi confronts the kid's parents, like the kid who had the brain before. He gives them back all the stuff that kid ever stole, which is the reason they unwound him, and he screams at them, please, please don't unwind me. Please. Now, the part of this kid brain doesn't realize that he's been unwound. So, Lev looks at the parents and tells them, tell him that you won't unwind him. It's the only way this is going to stop. So they do. And he stops, and Sci-Fi is finally able to take over. His parents get there, like Sci-Fi's parents, and they look at him and they hug him and everything's over. But Lev realizes, the cops are here. The whole government sees this. This is really big. I have to get away. So he runs. That's the last that we see of Lev for a little while. So what happens with Connor is they're in the hangar, and basically Roland almost rapes Risa. But he doesn't. But he insinuates that he's going to try again, and that he's going to kill Connor. But they figure out a way to escape that, and they're put onto the plane to go to the safe house, the final place that they're supposed to be, and it's this giant airplane graveyard. So, and it's run by this guy. Oh yeah, okay. So it's run by this guy that they call the Admiral. And what happens is that he runs this entire place. He has this upper ranks of unwind children that help him run it. And Roland doesn't like it. Roland starts using his smear tactics and spreading rumors throughout the entire time they're there. They're supposed to get into a routine find their job, and do what they're good at until they turn 18. Connor gets into being a mechanic, Risa gets into nursing, and eventually Roland starts this huge uprising, and he tries to take out the Admiral. He actually, in the process, kills the 5 people that are in the Admiral's top guys. They're the right-hand people for the Admiral. So he talks to Connor, and he asks Connor if he will be his spy, because the Admiral no longer has eyes to the place, and he knows that Roland is up to something. And so he figures that Connor is the best way to go, because Connor's a good guy. Connor accepts, of course, and around this time, Lev comes into the picture. He comes in with a new batch of Unwind children. He's there, but of course Connor's still a little mad at him, but they get over it. And while he's there, he meets up with 2 of these other people in the group. They're like his friends, sort of, but not really. Later you find out that he has joined this secret faction that is dedicated to chaos. They are known as clappers. And what happens is, when they clap their hands, they explode, because they have been injected with a substance that makes them really, really explosive. And if they have any kind of and they put detonators on their palms, and when they press them together, and when they clap them together, the person literally explodes. So he's joined this, and they have to get to a containment camp. Actually, that's later. He doesn't ever get to the graveyard, I'm pretty sure. They find him at the Unwind facility. Basically what happens is Roland is organizing this coup, and he shuts off the Admiral's electricity inside his bunker. They lock themselves in, but the Admiral starts to suffer a heart attack. So they get out, they get Roland to fly them to a hospital, and they get captured. Roland, Risa, Connor are now captured and taken to an Unwind facility. And they also learn that the government actually knows about the graveyard, the airplane graveyard, and the only reason they keep them there is because of the ability of supply and demand. If people think there's a shortage of unwinder children, then they can make more money. So basically, they're just leaving this alone because they don't see it as a threat, they see it as an asset. So while at the Unwind facility, like I said, they find Lev, and he's with the TID group, but there are also these 2 other people that he's with that are clappers like him. They have to be really careful because they can't detonate prematurely. So what happens is Risa ends up being with this, she joins the band that plays on top of the actual Unwind building where they unwind the children. And she plays piano, and it's actually a pretty good gig. They don't have to do manual labor, and they usually live a lot longer than the other people. Now Connor is known as this big figure to the people of to the unwound children. He's like this big symbol. So they're planning on unwinding him sooner than normal to make an example. Roland is unwound really, really early because his blood type is apparently really rare. So they need his blood. And this is where you get the first glimpse of the unwound process, because you see it entirely from Roland's point of view. And it doesn't really seem all that like he's dying. It's more like he's slowly being taken apart, but he's completely aware of it at the time. So eventually what happens is they're taking Connor to be unwound, and Lev tells the 2 people that are clappers with him, he says, "Get to your positions, we're going to detonate." So they do, and right as Connor is about to be taken into the building, 2 of the clappers, his friends, clap. 2 explosions. Lev is about to join them, but at the last second, he doesn't. He's the first clapper who didn't clap. Instead, he decides to go into the building and save people who are being who are caught in the wreckage. Now, like I said, Risa is a part of the band that plays on top of the building as people are being wound. Now the building exploded, so Risa came down with it. Connor runs in, grabs Risa out, but she's hurt badly. She's paralyzed from the waist down, you find out. And Lev is in there, he's helping people get out, and afterwards he turns himself over to the police, explains his situation, and because of the fact that he is a clapper, and he had that stuff put into his system, it's never going to be completely filtered out. They can filter most of it out, but because of this, he can never be unwound, because they can't use all of him. He's been tainted with clapper substance, and it will make him explode. So Risa is aware the entire time, but after the explosion, Connor passes out. When he wakes up, he realizes that something's different about him. His arm is weird, and what he realizes is on his shoulder he has a tiger shark tattoo. Now he didn't have that before, but I didn't say this earlier. But you know who did have a tiger shark tattoo? Roland, on his arm. Connor wakes up and he had his arm amputated, and he now has the arm of Roland. He was passed out cold, and there was nobody to tell him no. He says that if he had been given the choice, he would have said no. But he didn't. So he now has the arm of Roland. And of course Roland did try to rape Risa, so she's very at this point they've started going out, they have a relationship going, and she's very on the fence about it. She's kind of creeped out the fact that of all the Unwind parts he could get, this is the one he got. And he says, I promise I will never touch you with this arm. Now, Connor gets away. He finds a way to escape. He gets out. He has a new identity because he was given that identity by one of the nurses. The nurse said, this person died in the fire. For all we know, this could be you. Take the identity. She's trying to help him. So he takes the identity, and basically he's free. Risa cannot be unwound because she's paralyzed, and she's refusing to get an unwind part. She's refusing to get a new spine as treatment. She has decided she'd rather be paralyzed. So basically, the story ends, the Admiral lived, and he goes to his farm with his ex-wife, and there's all these unwound children there. Now, what you find out throughout the story is that there's this legend of a kid named Humphrey Dunphy. And what happened is his parents signed the Unwind release, and he was unwound. But then they decided they wanted him back. So they go around finding the people who got his parts and collect them. So that way they can put him back together. What you find out is that the Admiral's last name is actually Dunphy. And they're not trying to get him back, to put him back together per se. They're just trying to get all his parts in one place. And at the end of the story, they finally succeed. They get every single person who got a part of their son. And they are in a single place, and they start talking to each other, socializing. They don't have each other's names, they just have name tags of the part that they got. And that Admiral and his ex-wife are just kind of overwhelmed. He asks the crowd one question, son? And then like 3 or 4 people say at once, yes, Dad, because they remember him, because they got parts of his brain. So then he's not able to run the airplane graveyard anymore because of his condition, so it passes over to Connor. Roland, of course, is dead, so there's not really any uprising. He takes over. Risa is with him. She lives on the graveyard with him. They realize that that the government knows about them, but they're not doing anything about it because they don't see them as a threat. And Connor says, it's time that we show them that we are a threat and that we will not sit by while you do this to us. And that's basically where the story ends. Connor takes over. Lev is held in captivity because of the fact that he was a clapper. They're trying to understand him because he's the first clapper who didn't clap. Risa is paralyzed. Roland is dead. The Admiral finally gets his son back. Overall, it's an amazing book. I love this book. There's a sequel called Unwholly. I don't know when the third book is coming out, and I think they're making it into a movie. Other than that, I really don't know much. I give it a 4 out of 5. Um, it was really good. I loved it. I can't wait for the next book. I'll maybe review the second book if you guys want to. I don't know. I'll figure that out next week. So I guess I'll see you later.